On the left side, I'm going to show you today's outline. I have already introduced Vue to you and showed you a quick example. Next, we're going to talk about Vue's syntax. The first one is interpolation expression, aka mustache notation. We're also going to introduce you different kinds of important Vue directives. For example, vOn, vbind, vmodel, vif, vshow, v4. In section 4, we're going to talk about an architectural pattern or design pattern called MVVM. It stands for Model View, View Model. In section 5, we'll talk about more advanced features in Vue. For example, form input bindings, and you can even create your own directive. So everything starts with V- is the built-in directives, but as a developer, we can design our own directive in Vue.js. We're also going to talk about computed property. You have seen this in the introductory example. Also, Vue Watcher, filter, and how Vue handles array change. In the end, we're going to talk about Vue lifecycle, from when Vue was born and when Vue was destroyed. The first important feature of Vue is interpolation expressions, aka the mustache notation or the double curly braces. So if you still remember in native JS, how do we get data in JavaScript code into HTML? We have to first using getElementById to find a div or find any tag we want to put this value. And then we're going to use .value equal to or .inner HTML equal to, which is tedious. So there are two steps. You first find the element you want to change the value, and then you're going to assign the value to that HTML element. But this is very simple in Vue because Vue introduced these powerful interpolation expressions. So let me show the example. So we're going to VS Code. Now here I have already imported Vue.js. In body here, I'm going to define a root div. Remember, Vue requires a root div. And also, we need to give this div an ID. Okay, I'm going to call it app. In here, I'm going to define a h1, but the content of h1 won't be known until runtime. In other words, JavaScript will determine what is in h1. Remember, in native JS, we have to get element by ID to get this h1 and change this value to hello world or something like that. So we have to give ID. But using Vue, you no longer need to use ID. Now instead, mustache. So here, I'm going to just type message. All right. You can think of this as a placeholder, okay? Now this placeholder will be replaced with the value we defined in JS. So now I'm in JS. Do you still remember how we create a Vue instance? So we're using const equals Vue. Inside this Vue constructor, we're going to define element and let Vue take care of this div with ID equal to app. So this is a selector. So here, Vue, after this, Vue will take over the div with ID equal to app. Next, we're going to define this data object. In data object, we're going to define message with initial value. All right, that's it. So as you can see how simple it is to get a value in JavaScript into DOM or into HTML. Okay, we no longer need to get element by ID and change the inner HTML or value. Next, I'm going to launch it in browser. Right click, I'm going to view in browser. As you can see, we see hello Vue in here. So if we change the value, okay, if I press F12, now we're in console. If we change the value to, let's say, hello world. Now when I press enter, the message value in JavaScript has been changed, okay? And remember, because of the reactivity system of Vue, now Vue will detect this change and immediately update our view, our presentation. So if I press enter, as you can see now, this one is, so the Vue is reactive. So it shows you the change that in JavaScript object. So in this Vue JavaScript object. Next, let's talk about something more interesting. We're going to define a second property in data object. I'm going to call this number, and initially it's 100. So message has a string, and this number has an integer. Okay. And we can also put number here, so there's no problem. Now it's just my personal preference to add a space before and after this variable. Also, next, we're going to do more. Here we're going to do a p, and we can do arithmetic in here. Multiply 2 plus 10. All right. This time, if I launch it in browser, what happened? We're going to have 3 lines, right? So first, h1 will print hello Vue. The second h1 will print 100. And the third one is a p, right? So what happened here is 100 multiplied 2, that's 200, plus 10 is 210 will be printed. So right click, view in browser. That means you can also do arithmetic operations in the double curly braces or the mustache notations. So let's do a quick summary here. When a Vue instance is being created in browser, it adds all the properties. In this case, there are 2 properties found in its data object. Remember, there is a special data object in Vue's constructor to Vue's reactivity system. So if we change the value here from hello Vue to hello world, now the reactivity system will pick up this change and automatically update the Vue, the HTML. In other words, the Vue will react, updating to match the most current values. There is a very small issue here. It's really small because in most cases it won't cause any problem. So here's the deal. Currently, when the page gets loaded in browser, in script, we're creating a Vue instance and mounted it to the browser immediately. So the Vue will take over this div with id equal to app and replace the 3 interpolation expressions with their value. No problem. But what if the internet becomes very slow? Now remember, when we load it, we're going to first using the CDN to request Vue.js. So what if we show the page before Vue gets loaded or gets created? So let me show you what happened. Now to do this, I'm going to simulate a very slow internet. I'm not going to create a Vue instance immediately when we go to script. Instead, I'm going to cut this and use a function called setInterval. I hope you guys still remember what do I mean by setInterval. That is, here the first argument is a function after 3 seconds. Okay, so in this function, we're going to paste. We're going to create a Vue instance. That is, when we first load this page, we're going to show this div h1, 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 but the first 3 seconds, we haven't created an instance of Vue. In other words, Vue has not taken over. Okay, if I press refresh, all right, the mustache notations, the interpolation expressions will be shown. And after 3 seconds, when Vue instance has been created and take over this ID app, then those 3 mustache notations will be replaced. Okay, how do we solve this problem? In most cases, it's not a problem because we have fast internet, everything's good. And Vue provided a feature called vcloak. Okay, so we can annotate this as, hey, vcloak directive. Now, before we use this, we have to define this vcloak a little bit. That is, we're going to script and have style. So we're going to define a style of vcloak and make display equal to null. That is, if Vue has not been loaded, don't show this h1 in this case. Okay, I didn't add vcloak to the second h1 and the p for comparison purposes. All right, we put vcloak in first h1 and we define this vcloak in style. Refresh. As you can see, the first h1 is not shown. It's only shown when Vue gets loaded, right? So in this case, you will not see the unparsed mustache tag at the beginning. But still, this is not very user-friendly because if I go to your website, I see nothing there, right? Because everything has vcloak. Then I may be confused as what's going on. Is your web server down or something like that? So we probably want to give user a hint. So for example, maybe we have a loading, then ... So to remind the user, hey, be patient, right? We're going to present you the content later on. What we can do here is we're going to modify this vcloak a little bit. So I'm going to delete it here. We copied the style. I'm going to paste it here. Now, so this one is a CSS selector. It means everything under a element with this vcloak, okay, everything under this as a child will be displayed null initially. Okay, so this time we're going to move this vcloak. Instead of having vcloak on every single tag, h1, 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 I simply just add it to the div with id equal to app. Okay, because here this syntax means everything under this element with this cloak notation will be hidden. Okay, will be hidden. And before that, we're going to show loading. So we're going to see loading instead of empty page. All right. So save, and I'm going to refresh. There's only one loading, and then we can see the 3 values. So when Vue is ready, when everything's ready, we have values, not the unparsed tags, we can show them all. Okay, so it's recommended that you define this vcloak in CSS, in your global CSS file, and then add vcloak here, just in case. Okay.